Cooperation and teamwork are probably the two most important things that leaders cite about successful businesses. Today, I'm going to tell you why they aren't. Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. Well, I hope I deliver on that. Hey, welcome everybody. Today's podcast, I want to talk about silos. And actually, I don't want to talk about silos because silos are bad. Silos are a bad thing. Silos in business are where cooperation goes to die. And the definition of a silo is insular, such that, and silos aren't generally a person. They're often groups of people who band together to protect themselves from, guess what? Other silos. And once you've built one silo, you are going to build, others are going to happen. They're just going to happen. And the bigger the silo, the more likely we are to call them a kingdom, because silos are often built around personalities. So let's talk a little bit about how this manifests in our businesses today and what we're going to do about it. And of course, I'm going to relate this to balance, my book Balance and the Theory of Balance, and how it helps you deliver scalability. Silos are the antithesis of scalability. Silos are non-scalable. They don't flex. They don't grow and shrink with the business. They don't expand and contract capacity. They are finite, and that's one of the major problems. There's a lot of problems with silos. But let's talk about what happens when, we get rid of them and what do we replace them with. Now, people often ask me, Tom, who's the worst person you've ever found in a business? And I said, I've never found bad people in businesses. What I have found are silos. And when silos grow up around an individual, that tends to make that individual less effective and less valuable to the business. It might even make them toxic. Did the person make the silo? Yes. Did we let the silo happen? We sure did. And that's the problem. No one person can build a silo on their own. Somebody has to let them. I worked with an organization many years ago and came in and followed an order through the system, understand how their processes worked. For sales to write a quote, they had to go to a person, I don't remember their title. I called them the rental manager. They lived in the warehouse. They had their own little office. They ran the warehouse crew. They dispatched all the trucks. But for sales to write an order, they had to go check with the rental manager to see if that gear was going to be available, or any kind of order, for a show or whatever it might be. All sub-rentals went through this individual. So for a project manager to, get their show ready, they had to go to the rental manager. For an order to get billed, we had to go through the rental manager to see that all the gear was returned and there was no missing and damaged. Every process went through this one person who, oddly enough, worked 7 days a week and got paid hourly. Wow. Now, did that company design that? No. Here's an individual who took responsibilities where he saw they were not being taken by somebody else. Whether they were his values or the company's values is really not relevant. The fact is, all of this power ended up in one kingdom. And this was indeed a kingdom, because within his silo was him and him alone, right? There was nobody else in his silo. He had no second in command. There was no way around any of this, to the point where he didn't really take vacation, and he had all this accumulated time off that he was hoping to cash in one day somehow. I don't know how. Now, at some point in time, I don't remember if this individual survived my visit, because sometimes it looks like somebody is doing this intentionally and for nefarious reasons, and sometimes they just innocently ended up in this spot. And I see it in sales. I see it in finance. I found plenty of this in the accounting department. We certainly find it in management. Owners become silos by forcing things to go through them that keep other people from doing their jobs. So Silos get, do they get a bad rap? No. Silos are bad. They create defensive organizations. Silos are territorial. Um, People in silos become very devoted to their plans. A silo is basically a fortress that we built to protect our way of doing things from people who want to do things differently. And it's, we're protecting operations. The operations silo is protecting themselves from the sales team who just promise anything without even checking with us. Therefore, our answer is always no, because we have a plan. And if it changes the plan, you can't do it, which what's that going to do your business? Well, it's going to limit your capacity. One, it's not going to be any fun to work there. Two, you're not going to be responsive to your customers' needs. You're going to be really bad at problem solving because, well, problems were in the plan, so we don't want to solve that problem. So there's a lot of reasons that we don't want to end up here. Now, my balance model didn't set out to solve the silo problem, but it does naturally solve the silo problem, because we do need to cooperate across the organization, right? It just makes sense. But that's not the same as teamwork. So before I talk about what the balance model looks like, I want to talk about the other end of the spectrum, which is the teamwork model, where we're all on the same team. You've heard these people, we're all on the same team, rah, rah, rah. Everybody's in marketing, everybody's in sales, everybody's in operations. The over collaboration of endless production meetings, endlessly reviewing each job over and over again, constant team meetings and everything, making decisions by consensus, getting everybody together so that we can talk about what we want to get done and everyone has buy-in. Oh my God. This is another way of not getting things done. This is the other extreme. We go from the controlling defensive, mechanism of a silo to the unproductive, non-decision-making world of the super collaboration, teamwork, rah-rah model. People have to be in charge of things. We need our experts to do things. We need to stay in our lanes, but we also need to work with each other. So how do we reconcile all of this? Well, graphically, the way I do it in balance is I talk about the three primary spheres of the organization. And we have the selling sphere, which delivers an order that we can fulfill. We have the planning sphere, which fulfills the order. We have the admin sphere, which takes care of the accounting and the back office and the support resources for keeping the business running. And we all serve, those three spheres serve execution, which is our internal or external customer, depending on how you look at it. We are in the business of, you're in show business, you're in the business of getting shows done. Execution is what does shows. Selling, planning, and administration is what gets shows done. So in our business model, we are looking for well-developed selling spheres, okay, planning spheres, and admin spheres, and these spheres overlap. And we can look at this three-dimensionally because I want you to think of them as bubbles. And as those three bubbles come together, while a bubble in physics will create a wall, in balance, what we're doing is we're creating a blend. So we're sharing some space between our spheres. So there is an overlap of cooperation between the three spheres because they are all dependent upon one another to do their job well. However, they also do their jobs independently. This goes back to staying in our own lane. So we don't have people in operations doing accounting, but we have people in operations that depend on accounting for their needs. We have accounting that depends on operations to get data back. Okay, we need you to do purchase orders. I need you to get my vendors paid. Hey, why don't we cooperate? This sounds like a great business idea. So those are the three spheres. Drilling down into those spheres, I can talk about all the things that selling does. I mean, selling, we have to do marketing, we have to do business development, we have to find and attract opportunities come in. So a large part of selling is creating engagement to have conversations with customers that will lead to an opportunity to design a solution, which is another element of selling, which leads us to the opportunity to estimate something, which will hopefully lead to a proposal and close some business. So that engagement, design, and estimating are three subspheres within spheres. Again, these are not silos. These have to be cooperative because creating engagement also takes design mentality. Estimating has to cooperate with design, and we have to be aware of what's triggering the engagement. Those three things need to come together. Now, this can be a person in a small business. This could be the business owner who is doing all of these things and bringing these elements together in their conversations. But as companies grow, we have people who are specialized in these areas. Now, I know what you really want. You want a bunch of salespeople that are as good as your first salesperson, which means that they can engage, find their own business, design the job, build the quote perfectly, and supervise getting the job done. The super production manager salesperson model, that pipe dream, no, what we need are people who are experts at creating engagement, marketing, business development, opening doors, having conversations, moving the customer through the sales funnel. We have people who need to be able to introduce solutions into the conversation, which is the design process. We're going to design a solution for you. And this concept applies no matter how small the order is. Okay. Sometimes our designs are very simple. We're just taking some stock solutions and putting them together, but don't devalue the expertise that it takes to do that properly and communicate that to the customer. Now that I know what the design requires, I can easily put the estimate together, which could lead to a proposal, get the business closed, yada, 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 right? So I can have one person do all of that, or I can have experts in those three areas, and maybe this department is 3 people or 4 people or 10 people. But each of them is an expert in a sphere that cooperates with the other spheres. Now, obviously, I want, in the estimating group, I probably need more people because that's the sales and the account management side of the team. They probably need an expert in estimating inside of their team to make them more efficient. The design team might be one individual. It might be several individuals. We might outsource design from time to time. Engagement, we can outsource marketing. Heck, we can outsource business development, but it still needs to exist and it needs to be managed by one central person or leadership because it is a business sphere, right? I need somebody who's in charge of all selling. Spoiler alert, they don't need to be a salesperson, right? Now, we get over into the planning sphere, which is important right now because we have Jumpstart Planning coming up here in August, and many of you are attending that. Planning replaces this old concept of operations, which is inherently a silo. Operations is a silo. Sometimes warehouse is a silo. Sometimes warehouse is a subset of operations. But this silo of people who are very good at protecting a plan don't necessarily give us the depth of services we need to get shows done because they're trying to get sales to take that order, toss it out of their silo, have it land down in the operations silo so that operations, that's the handoff, right? So that operations can now take it over and do the job and nothing's ever going to change. But that's not the world we live in. That's not how business works. So we need something better, which is planning. And planning doesn't look at one show at a time. Planning looks at all of the shows at all the time. And while operations people, and I'm an old ops guy, and I'm sympathetic to this, think they look at all the jobs at the same time. They don't. They look at one job at a time. They reconcile that job, then they look at the next job and go, oops, if I make this job work, that screws up this job. Okay, well, I'll make this job work. Now I got to go back and fix this one. And they do it one job at a time. Planning pulls back and looks at everything, right? And we need people who are good at doing that. We need great people in operations because operations is a subset of planning. We have specification, which is the production management role. Specification takes that order that came out of selling, that perfect order, well-designed, well-constructed, perfectly priced, great customer, and now how are we going to get that done, right? We now have to get this project done. Oh, by the way, it's going to change. So specification starts to specify that job along with all the other jobs on there to make sure that they are well-defined in our delivery terms so that we can get these jobs done, get the right crew, get the right people there, get the drawings done, get all the procurement, sub-rentals, purchasing out of the way. Now, so specification, we have operations, which is very traditional. We're going to manage the inventory of the business. We're going to make sure operations is going to make sure that the equipment we sub-rent and the equipment we own get on the truck and go where they're supposed to go, right? That's the oversimplification of the operational model. But we also need procurement. And procurement is going to take care of those sub-rentals and the outsourcing, the booking labor and arranging travel, arranging trucking and logistics. And so there'll be multiple layers to procurement, which again, don't need to be individual silos. In a larger company, you could have 3 or 4 people working in procurement. Some may specialize in different areas, but they're doing redundant processes. They're just applying different areas of expertise. So specification, operations, and procurement will give me that well-planned show. I'm going to get a show done. Here's the plan for getting that show done. I can now hand it to the execution team. Admin, similarly, we have to deal with, accounting. We have to deal with the general administration of the company, which is things like HR and insurance. We have to do resource supply. This is, IT, CapEx inventory management, things like that, infrastructure, the building, your cell phones. So there's a lot of elements inside of admin, which we can outsource some of it. We can have people internally to work on it, but we can't make it a silo because admin has to cooperate with selling because it's part of the feedback loop on how well did we perform? How are our prices working? It has to cooperate with planning because it is part of the feedback loop. Okay, who do we need to pay money to? Are we managing these vendors appropriately? Are we getting the results we expected? And just like selling and planning obviously have to cooperate with each other because we need to understand what we sold so that we can specify it properly and get it done and deal with all the changes along the way. Now, notice in this sphere model and with the subspheres, we're getting a lot of work done. And it doesn't matter how many people we're doing it because we're focusing on the roles of what these teams need to do. Now, in a small company, I may have a planning team of 1 person. You would be in your best interest for that person not to be the salesperson. Now, if you're just starting out, if you're a solo entrepreneur in a startup company, you're doing all of these jobs. I get that. That's not where you want to be 5 years from now. It may not be where you want to be 1 year from now. But as you add people, try and reduce the redundancies so that work can get done inside of a sphere and delivered reliably. That's the outcome. That's what we're looking for. So spheres cooperate with each other. Subspheres cooperate with each other. We will get the shows done. Just like when we get onto show site, execution naturally does this. A well-executed show, sometimes the audio department's got to go over here and help put the drape up. Sometimes the video department got to help with the lights. Sometimes the lighting department has to help with everybody, right? There's a lot of things that we do cooperatively because that's what it's going to take to meet our deadlines, be rehearsal ready, deliver the product for the show. We're gonna wear the headset we need to wear to get the next cue executed properly. That's the wonderful thing about execution. It's already built up in a sphere system where people can move back and forth. And when they don't, when they are naturally siloed, and I come from theater, right? In theater, we're fairly siloed. We go to Broadway department, nobody in the lighting department on Broadway is hanging wireless mics on anybody, right? However, that spirit of cooperation says, I need to modify this cue to allow for this to happen in another department. That cooperation does absolutely exist. So again, spheres, not silos. We need to have open communication in order to do our jobs effectively. So when I talk about balance and when I talk about scalability, this is what I'm trying to get you to understand. We need to look at our organizational structure first. We need to quit taking our operations people and having them drive the trucks and go out and do the show because they're the best person available. I need to quit sending my best people out on show site. If they're show people, they should do shows. If they're planning people, they should plan. right? And if your operations manager, and I'm picking on operations here because of the jumpstart that's coming up, but also you are closest to my people. If the operations manager has to go out and do the show themselves because they couldn't find a freelancer to fill that job, okay, that's a them problem, right? You get to do that one time, and then you've got to reprioritize yourself because that should never happen. In an emergency, we do whatever we need to do. If your plan is for you to leave your post and reduce the capacity of your business to plan the next job so that you can go out and do a job, okay, you're in the wrong role, right? We need to fix that. So, think about that. I look forward to your questions. I look forward to seeing you guys at Jumpstart because I want you to understand what Jumpstart planning and execution, because I want you to understand how planning works in conjunction with execution, but they are two separate things, and that by paying attention to the realm of these spheres, that you're actually increasing the capacity of your business without adding people. And once you embrace the spheres and you get the right talent into each sphere, you find that you can run a very successful business with fewer people because they're always working inside of their highest and best use, which is the sphere to which they're assigned. So it's exciting stuff. I love talking about this. I love exploring it with you. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimson.com for more information.